Welcome to my YouTube channel. Hit the like button, share your thoughts, subscribe, and tap the bell icon. The man in the hoodie, the scream stopped traffic. People didn't look right, our most didn't want to get involved, but the sound, raw and panicked, cracked through the air like thunder. It came from an elderly woman, thin, silver-haired, wrapped in a coat too big for her tiny frame. She was on the sidewalk outside a pharmacy on 48th in Madison, clutching a brown paper bag to her chest, like it held her last hope. It didn't. Inside was a loaf of rye bread, 3 small pill bottles, and a handwritten grocery list torn from the back of an envelope. 2 police officers towered over her, red-faced and shouting. One looked barely older than 25, barking orders she clearly didn't understand. The other's hand hovered near his belt, agitated, impatient. "I told you to move along." The taller one snapped. "I'm just waiting for the bus," she said, her voice trembling. "You've been here 20 minutes. People complained." She tried to explain. I felt dizzy. I needed to sit for a moment. "Don't talk back." He snatched the paper bag from her hands. It tore, and the contents spilled across the sidewalk. A bottle of heart medication rolled into the street. The loaf of bread collapsed under his boot. She bent down instinctively, reaching to gather what she could when the second officer grabbed her wrist. That's when it happened. He yanked too hard. She stumbled, and then he shoved her. The old woman hit the pavement hard, face first. A sharp gasp went through the people nearby, finally pulling eyes away from phones and coffee cups. Blood was already forming beneath her elbow. She whimpered, trying to sit up. The taller cop stepped forward again, his boot inches from her fingers. But before he could say another word, a deep voice cut through the noise. "Hey." It wasn't loud, but it stopped everything. The crowd turned. A man in a grey hoodie was walking toward the scene, fast but calm. Broad shoulders, square jaw, and fists clenched tightly at his sides. His head was slightly down, hood up, like he wanted to avoid recognition, but there was something unmistakable about his walk. His presence. He pulled the hood down, and someone whispered it before anyone else could believe it. "That's Mike Tyson." The officers froze. Tyson didn't. He kept moving until he stood between them and the woman on the ground. "Step back, sir," one cop said, uncertain now. Tyson's voice was steady. "No, sir, you don't touch her again." The officer shifted uncomfortably. "She's resisting." Tyson's eyes didn't blink. "She's 72 years old. She resisted nothing. I saw you shove her." "You saw?" "I saw everything." The shorter cop's hand twitched toward his taser. "Bad idea." Tyson didn't flinch. "Go ahead. Try me." It wasn't a threat. It wasn't even angry. It was just truth. The kind of truth that made the air feel heavy. People had their phones out now. Several were recording. Red circles glowed from different angles. Tyson knelt down slowly beside the woman. Her hands trembled as she reached for her scattered medication. "Let me help you," he said gently. She looked up, blinking through tears. "Why? Why would you?" He smiled. "Because I've been where you are. Powerless." He helped her sit upright, brushing gravel from her coat. His movements were slow, careful, respectful. The crowd was silent now, watching something they hadn't expected to see today. Compassion in a world too used to violence. Tyson stood and looked back at the cops. "You're lucky cameras are rolling." The taller cop muttered something under his breath and turned away. The other one glanced at the phones and stepped back, trying to look busy. Tyson turned to the woman again. "Can you stand?" She nodded. He helped her up with both hands, lifting her like she weighed nothing at all. The crosswalk sign changed. He placed his arm gently around her shoulders and began walking her across the street, slow, patient, shielding her from traffic like a bodyguard. The moment went viral within hours. By nightfall, it was everywhere. Tyson defends grandma from police brutality. The footage had over 3 million views. The city council announced an emergency investigation. The 2 officers were placed on immediate leave. But in all the noise, no one noticed the strangest detail of all. Tyson knew her. He'd seen her face before decades ago. And what he remembered wasn't just about kindness, that it was about debt. Because 30 years ago, behind the closed doors of a federal courtroom, this woman had saved Mike Tyson's life. And now, whether by fate or something far darker, someone had come to finish what that courtroom never could. Only this time, Mike wouldn't let it happen. Not again. The trial no one knew about. She hadn't aged much. Not in the ways that mattered. Her hair was thinner now, silver instead of black, and her back curved slightly when she walked. But her eyes, those deep, steady eyes, were exactly as he remembered them from that courtroom in 1992. Back then, Mike Tyson had been facing a storm so big it nearly swallowed his life whole, and she, Miriam Collins, had stepped in at the last second and told the truth no one else dared say. Now she was sitting on a worn leather couch in Tyson's home, a mug of chamomile tea in both hands, her coat still stained with dried blood from the sidewalk. "You remembered me," she said softly. Tyson leaned against the far wall, arms crossed. "Hard to forget the person who stopped the wolves from tearing you apart." She looked down into her tea. "That trial ruined me. I know." Her voice cracked just a little. "They sent death threats to my house, called me a liar, a race traitor, said I protected a criminal." "You didn't protect me," Tyson said. "You protected the truth." That truth, ugly, complicated, and completely buried for decades, was something only the two of them seemed to remember. The world had moved on, headlines had faded, but the weight of it never really left. Tyson finally sat across from her. "Why were those cops hassling you?" She hesitated. "I don't know." "You sure?" Her hands tightened on the mug. "I've kept quiet for a long time, maybe too long. Someone wants to shut you up." Miriam didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached into her coat and pulled out a torn piece of envelope, the same list she'd been holding when the bag ripped open in the street. She flipped it over. There were no groceries written on the back, just 3 names, each one underlined. Tyson leaned forward. "Who are these?" "The last 3 people who were in the room during your case. The ones who pressured the DA too are dead. The 3rd one, I think he's coming for me." Tyson stared at the names. One jumped out immediately. "Calvin Breyer." "Breyer's still alive?" he asked. She nodded. "He's rich now. Private security firms, real estate. He's cleaned his image, but the filth's still underneath. I remember him." Tyson's jaw tightened. "He told the judge I was a danger to the state, said I'd never change. He also told me to lie on the stand," Miriam said. "Offered me $30,000 to say I saw you hurt that girl." Tyson's eyes darkened. "You never told me that. I thought it was over." He sat back, blowing out a breath. The room felt heavier now. Miriam took another sip of tea, slower this time. "The police didn't know who I was today, but they were following instructions. Someone wanted me roughed up, scared, maybe worse." Tyson stood up. "They didn't expect someone to step in." "No," she said, "they didn't." He paced for a moment, then pulled out his phone. "I'm calling someone I trust. Lawyer." "Worse," he said, already typing. "Old friend. Knows how to make people disappear, but only if they deserve it." She blinked. "Mike, I'm not going to hurt him," he said quickly, "but I am going to find him." Outside the house, headlights passed. Tyson walked to the window and pulled the curtain aside, just enough to glance out. Then, he froze. A black SUV sat idling across the street. No movement, no sound. "Do you have anyone else who knows what you know?" he asked. Miriam shook her head. He let the curtain fall. "Then we've got a problem." She stood, slowly. "You think they followed me? I think they never stopped." Tyson crossed the room and locked the front door, then the back. He turned off the lights. "I've got a place we can go." "I'm not running," Miriam said firmly. He looked her dead in the eye. "You won't be. But we'll need to move if we're going to bring this into the light without someone silencing you first." Her shoulders slumped. "I don't want to go through this again. You won't be alone this time." Silence settled between them. Then she said quietly, "I never told anyone what I saw in that room, not even my own family. I kept the secret so long, I started pretending it wasn't real. But it was," Tyson said. "And now, if we're going to survive this if we're going to stop Breyer and whoever else is tied to this, we're going to need that truth again." Miriam looked down at the list, her fingers brushing over each name like she was touching a ghost. "Then let's make it hurt." The day everything was supposed to end, the air inside the motel room was thick with tension and stale coffee. Tyson had chosen the place carefully off the highway. No cameras, no staff asking questions. He'd paid in cash and used a name that didn't belong to him. Miriam was asleep on the bed, curled beneath a blanket like she hadn't rested in weeks. He sat near the window, watching the door, phone in hand. Every few minutes, he scrolled back to the same photo, the 3 names on the torn envelope: Calvin Breyer, Raymond Tull, Maria Vance. Raymond and Maria were already dead. Tull had died in a hit-and-run last year. Maria, a retired court clerk, died of a sudden heart attack 2 months ago, but according to Miriam, she'd called 2 days before her death, whispering that someone was reaching into the past and trying to silence it, and now only one name remained, Briar. But what still burned in Tyson's mind wasn't just Briar's name. It was Miriam's voice when she said, "I think he's coming for me." 1992, Manhattan Criminal Courthouse. The courtroom smelled like waxed floors and fear. Mike Tyson, then only 26, sat in a suit that didn't fit, facing charges that could erase the rest of his life. Miriam hadn't even been scheduled to testify. She was an interpreter fluent in French and Spanish and brought in for another case, but she'd seen something crucial. She'd been outside the courtroom when a man approached a witnesser, young girl, crying, and offered her money to change her story. That man was Calvin Briar. At the time, Briar was a rising star in private law, hired by powerful people to handle inconvenient truths. And the truth was, Mike had been set up, trapped in a scandal designed to make headlines and tank his reputation. Miriam hadn't planned to speak, but when she saw that same girl take the stand, unlighterified, stammering, tears welling up, Miriam couldn't stay quiet. She stood in the back of the courtroom and said, "Your Honor, I need to be sworn in. I have something to say." It turned the trial upside down. Briar nearly lost his license, but Miriam lost far more. She was fired quietly, blacklisted from court work. Mail went missing. Her car was keyed. Someone threw a brick through her window one night, but she kept her mouth shut. After that, buried the truth deep inside. Until now. Tyson jolted from the memory when Miriam stirred. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded slowly, eyes still adjusting to the dim light. "I was dreaming," she murmured, "about that girl, the one who lied." "She was scared," Tyson said. "We all were." Miriam sat up. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't said anything? I'd probably be dead by now." She didn't respond, but the guilt was written across her face. Tyson stood and stretched. "We're going to see someone who we checked the time, a man who used to work for Briar. He flipped years ago, said Briar had files, blackmail material, witness lists, even records of who was paid off. You think he still has them? If he does," Tyson said, "we'll finally know who wanted me in a cage and who wants you in a coffin now." An hour later, they pulled into a mechanic's shop just outside Newark. The sign said Maurice Auto, but nobody came for car repairs. The real business operated behind a locked steel door and 2 camera feeds. Tyson knocked once, waited, then knocked twice more. A latch clicked. The door opened. "Jesus Christ," the man said, blinking. Tyson. He was in his 60s, thin, with tattoos up both arms and nicotine-stained fingers. "Haven't seen you in 20 years. Didn't think you'd want to," Tyson replied. The man looked at Miriam. "It's her. She's the reason we're here." The man nodded once, then motioned them inside. "Name's Rico." He led them to a small back room filled with filing cabinets, yellowed folders, and an ancient laptop. Rico lit a cigarette. "Briar was a freak for keeping records. Thought it made him powerful, but I copied everything before I walked out." "Why?" Miriam asked. "Because I knew one day someone would come back from the past looking for answers. Didn't think it'd be you two, though." He opened one drawer and pulled out a thick brown folder marked T41, suppressed evidence. Inside were names, documents, financial records, surveillance photos. Tyson flipped through it slowly and then stopped cold. A recent photo of Miriam, dated last week, a red circle drawn around her head. "She's marked," Rico said flatly. "Briar wants her gone." Quietly. Miriam's face turned pale. Tyson clenched the folder tight. "What about me?" Rico opened a second file. There, it was, a document titled Contingency, Mount Insight, a page stamped with 2 words, "Open if he talks." Tyson's jaw tightened. "This isn't just about revenge," he said. "It's about something bigger, something still alive." Rico nodded grimly. "And if you're smart, you'll both disappear." Tyson looked at Miriam, who was staring at the file with a silent kind of fury. "No," she whispered. "We're not hiding this time." Tyson smiled. "Good, because now we're not just surviving, we're fighting back." The betrayal came from inside Mike. Tyson had been in a lot of fights, but nothing prepared him for the one that began. The moment he and Miriam stepped out of the garage that morning, Rico had given them the files. The evidence, names, dates, bank accounts, death orders. Everything. They were supposed to take it straight to a trusted journalist in Brooklyn. Someone Tyson had once saved from a brutal tabloid smear campaign. A guy who owed him. Instead, just 10 minutes after leaving, Tyson saw the black SUV again, this time, tailing them. He made 3 random turns, then another. Still there. Miriam sat stiff beside him, clutching the brown folder like it was her last breath. I think they know, she whispered. They do, Tyson muttered, but not how much we know. He tapped a number into his burner phone and hit call. It rang once, twice, then, yeah. Change of plan. I need extraction. You sure? That'll set things in motion, I'm sure. They're closing in. Got it. 10 minutes. Tyson hung up. Then the first bullet hit the rear window. They ducked just in time. Glass exploded behind them as Tyson jerked the wheel hard and gunned it down an alley. Miriam screamed. She still had the folder clutched in her arms. Another bullet ripped through the side. Mirror, they're not trying to scare us anymore, she gasped. They're trying to end it. No, Tyson growled. They're trying to clean it up. They lost the SUV near the docks. Tyson took a zigzag route through a maze of shipping containers and finally drove into an old warehouse. Inside was a single man. Already, Watinga, tall, lean figure in a long coat, holding a duffel bag. Tyson jumped out of the car. You brought it? He asked. The man nodded. New phones, disguises, IDs, keys to a safe house in upstate. Nobody will find you there. Miriam climbed out slowly, eyes wide. Who is he? An old favor, Tyson said simply. Back when I was fighting ghosts. She didn't ask more. There wasn't time, but the man's eyes lingered on the folder in Miriam's hands. That the evidence? He asked. Tyson hesitated. Some of it. The man raised an eyebrow. You trust me? I used to. That pause lasted a second too long. Then it happened. Before Miriam could even blink, the man swung the duffel bag toward Tyson's face. But Tyson moved fast, years of muscle memory kicking in. He ducked and slammed his shoulder into the man's ribs. The duffel hit the ground. It wasn't full of supplies. It was full of bricks, weapons, weights, a setup run. Tyson shouted. Miriam turned, but the man grabbed her wrist. Then Tyson's fist collided with the man's hand. The room shook. The man hit the ground hard, unconscious. Miriam backed away, breathing hard. Who was he? She asked. Tyson bent down and pulled a small earpiece from the man's jacket. Static buzzed. Then, a voice crackled through. Do you have the folder? Miriam stared in horror. They knew the whole time, she whispered. Tyson nodded grimly. He was the leak. He stood and looked her straight in the eye. We can't trust anyone now. They reached the safe house hours later. It was remote, hidden behind trees, with no neighbors for miles. The windows were already boarded. A generator powered only the essentials. Tyson checked every room, every drawer, every floorboard. No trackers, no cameras, no setup, just silence. And inside that silence, Miriam finally broke. I thought he was your friend, she said, sitting at the edge of the bed, tears in her voice. How many more people are lying to us? Tyson sat beside her. You know what scares them the most? He asked, truth wrapped in a survivor's voice. She looked at him, puzzled. You're not just someone they hurt. You're someone who lived. That's more dangerous than any bullet. She didn't speak for a while. Then she opened the folder again. One photo slid out different from the others. Tyson picked it up. It was grainy, black and white. But he knew that face. It was his old trainer. Gusty single quotes Amato. Except there was something written on the back. Call him. He knew the real reason they framed you. Tyson stared at the photo, stunned. Gus died before the trial, he whispered. Miriam shook her head. No, he died during it, but not before giving a sealed letter to someone in case anything happened. To who? To the girl, Miriam said. The same one who lied on the stand. She didn't vanish. She changed her name, went into hiding. Briar paid her off to stay buried. Tyson's fists clenched. If she's still alive, Miriam continued, she might have the letter. He stood and began pacing. We find her. Miriam's voice was steady now. We have to. She holds the final piece. Just then, the burner phone rang. Tyson froze. Only one person had that number. He answered. You need to leave, a voice said. Now they know about the safe house. There's a price on both your heads. Who is this? Someone who still owes you. The voice replied. They're coming in 20 minutes. You have 10 to disappear. Click. The line went dead. Tyson turned to Miriam. Pack what you can carry. Where are we going? He glanced at the folder, the photo of Gus, and the list of names. To find the girl who saved my life once, he said, and make sure no one buries the truth again. The girl who knew too much. They barely made it out in time. By the time Tyson's car disappeared over the hill, headlights filled the trees behind them. 3 black SUVs, engines snarling like wolves on the hunt. But the safe house would buy them a few minutes, long enough to disappear again. Miriam didn't ask where they were going. She didn't need to. The address Rico had scribbled on the back of Gus's photo now sat in her lap, written in fading blue ink. 1350 Augusta Lane, Rochester, NY. An old farmhouse, remote, unlisted, and according to Rico, that's where the girl lived. Now if she was still alive. Tyson hadn't spoken in almost an hour. His hands gripped the wheel tighter than ever. There was something building in him, not just anger or fear, something deeper. This girl, Miriam finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. What was her name again? Tyson's eyes didn't leave the road. Back then, Valerie Cruz, and now, don't know. That's what scares me. They pulled into the driveway at 3:42 a.m. The house was dark. A small porch light flickered near the door, casting long shadows across the overgrown grass. An old wind chime creaked in the wind. The mailbox said G.I. Nash. Different name, Tyson muttered. Could be her. They approached slowly. Tyson knocked twice, then once, then twice again. A pause. Then the curtain shifted. A voice came through the door, shaky and low. Say the code. Tyson froze. What code? Another pause. Then a different voice, stronger, female, older. Say the code, or walk away, champ. He stared at the door. Then he said, slowly, the truth doesn't sleep. Click. The lock turned. The door creaked open. Standing there was a woman in her mid-40s, dressed in sweatpants and a flannel shirt, holding a shotgun pointed low. Her eyes locked onto Tyson. I haven't seen you in 30 years, she said, and I hoped I never would. Her name was Gina Nash. Now. Same girl. New face, new identity. She let them in after checking the yard with night vision binoculars. Inside, the farmhouse smelled like cedar and candle wax. Dozens of newspapers were stacked on a table, most of them about corruption, whistleblowers, or cold cases. Gina led them to a small back room filled with locked boxes and one old safe. She didn't speak for a while. Finally, Miriam asked, why did you lie back then? Gina's jaw clenched. Because Briar told me if I didn't, my brother would end up accidentally overdosing in juvie. Did you get paid? Tyson asked. Gina nodded slowly. 10 grand, but I never spent a cent. I still have the envelope it came in. She walked over to a cabinet, opened a drawer, and pulled out a dusty leather box. Inside was a small, sealed letter, yellow with age, but untouched. Gus gave me this before he died, she said. Told me to give it to you if I ever saw you again, or if I ever found enough courage to tell the truth. Tyson reached for it, hands trembling. He opened the seal. Inside was a short letter, handwritten, Gus's unmistakable scrawl. Mike, if you're reading this, then the men who built your fall are still pulling strings. Briar wasn't acting alone. He was protecting something bigger. Find the name, Hendrik Shaw. If you expose him, everything collapses. Stay strong. Don't let the pain turn you mean. Gus. Tyson read it 3 times before looking up. Hendrik Shaw, he said, aloud. I know that name. Miriam frowned. Who is he? Former district attorney, Tyson muttered. Now owns half the media companies in New York. Briar worked under him. Gina walked over to a closet, opened a hidden compartment, and pulled out a binder. I've been tracking Shaw for years, she said. He's untouchable. But if you're going after him, you'll need more than truth. Tyson's hands clenched the letter tight. We've got files, names, a motive. We've got everything. Then you've got a target on your back, Gina said flatly. And so do I now. Miriam nodded. They came to kill us tonight. They won't stop. Gina opened the binder. Then, we take the truth public, fast, before they erase it. Tyson looked at her. Would you testify? She took a deep breath. I lied for 30 years. Time to tell the world what really happened. The plan came together fast. Gina knew a journalist in Canada who owed her a favor, someone not afraid to run a dangerous story. Tyson and Miriam would drive her to the border, and from there, Gina would go public with the documents, the letter, the truth. It was dangerous, desperate, but it was the only shot. The next morning, Just before sunrise, they loaded into the car and pulled out of the driveway. They didn't see the figure watching them from the trees, or the phone that clicked a photo as they passed, but someone was watching, and someone had already made the call. 2 hours later, on a deserted stretch of highway, the trap was waiting. A downed tree, a fake road crew, no way around. Tyson stopped the car. 3 men stepped out from behind a utility truck. One of them was Calvin Breyer, older, cold eyes, still in control. He smiled at Tyson like they were old poker buddies. "You should have stayed out of it," he said, "but you always had a flair for drama." Gina's hand slipped under her jacket where a recording device was taped to her chest. Miriam's hand trembled on the door handle. Tyson got out slowly. "Last chance, Breyer," he said. "Walk away," Breyer smirked. "Or what?" Tyson's voice turned to steel. "Or the world hears everything." Breyer nodded to the men. "Take the girl. Burn the car." But before they could move, a helicopter roared overhead. Spotlights, sirens, agents, yelling, "FBI." Breyer's smile vanished. One of the men ran. Another dropped his gun. Tyson looked up to see Rico leaning out of the chopper, headset on, yelling into a megaphone. "You were right, Tyson. They were listening the whole time. Truth has no exit." The courtroom was so silent you could hear hearts breaking. Miriam sat in the front row, hands tightly clasped in her lap. Her bruises had faded, but the weight in her eyes hadn't. On her left sat Gina, the woman who had lied decades ago and was now risking her life to tell the truth. Mike Tyson stood at the center of it all, taller than anyone, heavier than the past, and quieter than ever before. 3 weeks had passed since the roadside standoff. 3 weeks of interrogations, witness protection, press conferences, leaks, and panic. When the FBI swept in, they didn't just arrest Breyer. They cracked open a vault of corruption that stretched back 30 years. Hendrik Shaw was named, subpoenaed, exposed, but it wasn't over. Not until Mike got to say it, in front of the world, and now he stood at the witness stand, former world champion, fallen icon, wrongly convicted felon, about to say what had lived inside him since the day he lost everything. He looked straight ahead, not at the cameras, not at the jury, just ahead. "I was 19 when I first saw how fast they could take it all away," he said. His voice wasn't loud, but every syllable cut clean. "They didn't just want to punish me, they wanted to erase me. From the news, from the sport, from history, and they almost did." He looked at Gina, then back at the judge. She lied, but not for money, not for fame. She lied to survive. A ripple moved through the courtroom. Tyson reached into his jacket and pulled out the letter. Gus had written, now preserved in a protective sleeve. "My trainer knew the truth." But no one listened back then, because the people in power made sure his voice got buried with him. He placed the letter on the stand. "This isn't about revenge. This is about ending the cycle, so no other kid grows up thinking justice is just a word that rich men use to clean up messes." Silence. Then the judge nodded. "Thank you, Mr. Tyson." Tyson stepped down. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed, news vans, drones, protesters holding signs that read, "Justice for the Forgotten. Expose Shaw. Miriam matters." Gina gave her statement next. She told the world exactly what she did, and why she did it. No excuses, just truth. "I was 17. They told me if I didn't lie, my brother would be dead in 48 hours. I told myself I was saving a life, but I destroyed another one in the process." Her voice cracked, but she didn't stop. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for accountability for all of them." She looked directly into the camera, especially Hendrik Shaw. The media storm exploded. For weeks, Tyson's face was everywhere again, this time, not as a monster, not as a myth, but as a man who survived it all. A man who spoke softly now, but hit harder with truth than he ever did with fists. Public support surged. Celebrities spoke out. Former opponents posted in solidarity. Even old trainers and analysts who once distanced themselves started coming back around. But one headline hit harder than the rest. "Hendrik Shaw found dead in luxury estate. Suicide sus PCT." Tyson read it in silence. Miriam handed him the paper, without saying a word. Later that day, the FBI confirmed what many feared. Shaw had burned hundreds of documents before his death. Whatever secrets he took to the grave would stay there. But it didn't change what had already been uncovered. The system cracked. And the world saw it. 6 months later, Tyson stood in front of the old gym Gus once owned. It had been abandoned for years. Boarded windows, rusted chains on the front gate. He took a bolt cutter and snapped the lock. Inside, dust swirled through shafts of light, and the echoes of the past lingered in the corners. Miriam stood beside him. "You're really going to reopen it?" she asked. He nodded. "Not for fighting, for healing." She smiled faintly. "A gym for survivors." He looked at the cracked boxing ring, the faded posters, the forgotten photos. "No, a place to teach kids that surviving is fighting." They stood in silence. Then she said something she hadn't said since the night they met. "I thought I was dead when they beat me, but you didn't just save me. You reminded me I mattered." Tyson looked at her, eyes soft. "You always mattered, Miriam. They just worked real hard to make you forget." A year later, the Gus D'Amato Center for Justice and Recovery opened its doors. Tyson taught there twice a week. So did Miriam. Gina now ran a foundation that helped wrongfully accused inmates. The world kept moving. But now, with a few more eyes open, the story wasn't about a boxing legend anymore. It was about survival, about facing the people who write your ending, taking the pen back. Tyson stood in the ring one evening, alone, watching a new kid hit the bag. His fists were too fast, his stance awkward, but the fire in his eyes, real, just like Tyson's used to be. Miriam walked up behind him and handed him new flyer, mentorship program for kids with no corner. He smiled. Maybe that was the real knockout punch. Not the wins, not the revenge, but this helping others rise after falling the way he had. Final line: sometimes losing everything isn't the end. It's the beginning of the person you were always meant to become. The end.